The true benefits of using Apple Refurbished to buy your next Mac? Let's talk about it. Welcome back to the channel. So let's talk about Apple Refurbished for a second. I hear a lot of people comment on this. And I have a lot of experience with this because I've actually bought 4 different Macs using Apple Refurbished, and there's also some pros and cons, but there's some very, very specific reasons why you want to use Apple Refurbished over just buying it directly from Apple or buying it from like Best Buy or one of the big box stores. I'm going to break down exactly what the kind of advantage is right here. And by the end of the video, I'm going to also show you a savings of over $400 on a really cool configuration for a Mac. So let me just go ahead and show you the true advantages of using Apple Refurbished. Let's get into it. So for me to show you the advantages of Apple Refurbished, first let me just start off by saying, when should you never use Apple Refurbished, all right? This is the most important thing to begin with, and then we're going to get into why you should. So you should never use Apple Refurbished if you're buying a base level MacBook or Mac Mini, just a base level Mac. That means like 256 gigs of RAM or 256 gigs of storage, 8 gigs of RAM. You don't never want to use Apple Refurbished for a system that's very, very basic just like that. And let me just show you here. I'll prove it to you. So here we are. Here's Apple Refurbished store right here. It's $849. This is the M2. It's a 13-inch MacBook Air here, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gigabyte SSD, $849. You can see actually down here, you can see this, the specifications here. So it's just the base model, but it is the M2 version for all it's worth. All right, but let's just go ahead to Apple's main store. They still sell it there. So if you want to buy it new, you can see it's actually $999, right? So it looks like a good deal. You go back here, it's, what is it? It's $849. You go to their new site, it's $999. Even with the student discount, you're still saving $50, and it's probably a great condition system. But there's some things that they don't tell you, right? So that you see that, and most people will see that, and they're like, hey, that's a good deal. But with Apple Refurbished, that's not the case. So we go over here. You can buy this system right now on Amazon, brand new, and look at it. It's from Apple, the Apple Store. $799 on Amazon, 20% off. You can buy it way less, right? And that's actually coming from Amazon. You can get the same warranty, the same everything. You can buy it from other stores, like big box stores as well. Here's Best Buy, $799 as well. So here you're getting it for $50 less. It's new, it's not refurbished. So why would you buy it from the Apple Refurbished store there, or even the Apple News store? That makes no sense. You can get the same Apple Care, everything on these things, so avoid that. All right, let me just show you one more example on the base level things and why you shouldn't buy them from the Apple Refurbished. But this is a little bit different. So over here, you can see on my screen here, this is the refurbished 24-inch iMac. This is going to be the M3 24-inch. It's the base model. It's the blue one I kind of have sitting here. If I scroll down here, it's 8 gigs, 256, and the M3. So here it is. It looks like a good savings, $200. It's usually $12.99, and it's $10.99, right? And it is. I mean, obviously, if you go to their website, it's going to be $12.99 if you buy it new. But at B&H right now, and I've seen it actually cheaper, but B&H actually has it for $150 off as well, and it's $11,149, right? So $50 more here, you can buy a brand new one versus buying possibly a refurbished one, even though sometimes they come new from Apple Refurbished. But still, you can see the difference. Is it worth the $50? Would you rather have peace of mind that you're the only one using it? Of course you would. So I would normally buy it from a place like this. Again, this is the base model only. So with that said, though, why in the world now? Let's get into why in the world would you actually want to use Apple Refurbished? What are the advantages of it? And there's some huge ones. I'm going to show you some deals you won't believe here. So sit back and relax. And first I'm going to start out small, but then I'm going to get up to some bigger ones. Now, I just said to buy the base model at the big box store, you're going to get a better deal. But you'll notice that the big box stores, they don't offer custom configurations really at all. So if you take a look over here on Amazon, this is the M3. This is the base model, but $899 for the M3 MacBook Air. You can see it here. That's kind of a good cost, right? 18% off right now. But look down here. If I scroll down here, I can't even get 16 gigs of RAM here from Apple. So Apple's not putting up a 16 gigabyte version on Amazon for you to buy. You can buy the 8 gigs. You can even buy 512 gigs. But if you wanted 16 gigs of RAM and you want that special configuration, you got to go to Apple Store, right? Or you got to go to Apple Refurbished, or you got to go somewhere else. But you can't really get it here from Amazon. Same thing with Best Buy. Take a look over here. Here's the M3. This is the MacBook chip, M3 chip. 8 gigs, 250. Just basically the base model, the 13-inch. And you'll see here, $899, right? Same cost. Let's scroll down. What's grayed out? 16 gigs of RAM. Look at that. It's grayed out. So you can't even get 16 gigs at Best Buy either. So what gives here? Well, let me just tell you. So what Apple does is they allow all the big box stores to sell the very, very specific, base modifications or customizations. They don't let them sell a whole bunch of weird things because they know that the power users are willing to pay for those things. So the power users that need 16 gigs, 2 terabytes, 1 terabyte are willing to go into the Apple Store, configure their MacBook, wait for it to be shipped in. It's usually for business or for work or something where they really specifically need that stuff. So what they do here is they know that all the people walking into Best Buy and Amazon, they do kind of impulse buys. They're going to buy the base model, which is probably not the best one to buy in most cases, but they're going to buy them just because they're cheap and they see them instantly and they see it in the store and they just pick it up. It's an impulse buy. But Apple's smart. They're not going to let those guys sell all the weird configurations that the people that spend the real money, they want to sell them to them themselves. So this is where Apple Refurbished comes in. All right, so let's just say you want that M3 Air, right? But you want that 16 gigs of RAM and you even want 512 gigabyte SSD, but you can't get it at the big box stores. So here we go. We go to Apple's store then, the main store. This is not the Refurbished. This is their main store. What we do is we can figure it out here. You can see I have 16 gigs of RAM, and I actually went down and did 512 gigabyte SSD right here, $14.99. And really, like I said, that's pretty much your only option in a lot of cases because these configurations aren't available elsewhere. So what you want to do is then look at this. We go to Apple Refurbished, and we start searching for this kind of configuration. Do they have it? And they do. $1,269 right here. So we can see that it's going to be 16 gigs of RAM, 512 gigabyte SSD. The configuration that we actually want here, refurbished for $1,269, and that's versus $14.99. So even with the $100 discount, student discount you might get on a new product, you're still saving, what, $160 or something, $150. It's still a pretty good savings, right? So here's a good idea where you do want to use Apple Refurbished because most of the time they're shipping these older units they're basically new. I think a lot of these are overstocked because people don't always buy these, and they just throw them into the Refurbished after a while to get rid of them, especially on the older ones like the M2s and stuff like that. So you definitely want to consider this in this case, but let's just keep going because there's some better examples here. All right, so here's another good example. So let's just say you need something very specific, and let's just go over to the Apple Refurbished. So here's another one that you'll never see on the big box stores. 16 gigs of RAM, 1 terabyte SSD. You can see it right here. This is going to be the M2 15-inch MacBook Air. All right, they don't even really sell you can't go to Apple's new store and buy the 15-inch M2 version right now, let alone 16 gigs of RAM and a 1 terabyte configuration. I actually have the M2 right here with 16 gigs, but only 512. I couldn't get 1 terabyte on this in the big box stores. Here it is, $14.89. That's almost like $400 off what it normally would have been. So here's a great example of where you would want to search because obviously Apple Refurbished is one of the only places that has this right now. On top of it, you get a really good cost here, almost $400 off or somewhere in that range off the list price. So overall, this would be a good example. But beyond this, let's keep going because I have some more extreme cases, or at least one more, that's pretty eye-opening. All right, let's just say now that you're a power user and you need a very specific setup, all right? And this is not, I'm just giving you an example. This can be anything. Here, let's say you want an M2 MacBook Air. You want it super light and thin. You travel a lot. You want obviously the 13-inch because you just want to be on planes all the time, but you need 24 gigs of RAM. You need 2 terabyte SSD. I mean, who's going to get that configuration, right? But let's say that's what you actually need. So we go to Apple's store. They still sell basically the M2. Here it is right here, 13-inch M2, 2 terabyte of storage, 24 gigabytes of RAM, 2 terabyte SSD here. We take a look down here, $21.99. You can still buy this brand new from Apple, right? But why would you? So we get lucky. We go to Apple Refurbished, and this is the kind of stuff you look for. We start searching for this, and we get a hit. It's not always going to be like this, but this time we did. So we bring it up over here. What do we have? Here it is, refurbished 13-inch MacBook Air M2 chip, 8-core, right here. 24 gigs of RAM, 2 terabyte SSD down here. And what is the cost? $18.69. So here is a savings of close, what is it, $350, $360. We're saving a ton of money. So even with Apple Care, you're saving an extra $250 or something. And here's a really good deal for this. And it's a configuration you really can't get in many other places on sale, especially from the big box stores. So here's where you want to use this. This will work not just with the M2, it'll work with the M3s, with the MacBook Pros. Look for these off configurations that are never on sale. And this is where you want to pick them up. And on top of it, on those really weird configurations like the one right here, these are almost always new systems because they couldn't sell these things. They had to make some of them because obviously who's going to buy a 24 gigabyte MacBook Air that's a 13-inch, right, with 2 terabytes of RAM. Very few people buy those, but they had to make them. So a lot of times when you buy them refurbished like this, they actually ship to you new. Nobody ever used them. They're brand new, basically. And you can't verify that, I know that, but I almost guarantee that you'll have not even a single scratch on them, and they'll work perfectly, and they'll be warranted just like the new ones. So overall, what is the moral of the story? The moral of the story is, if you're buying any type of a base model Mac, all right, never use Apple Refurbished because you're going to get a better deal from the big box stores. I mean, maybe Apple, I doubt it, but the big box stores, and it's not even worth it if it's close, right? You want to get the new one. But if you're buying those really weird configurations, number one, you can get some extreme sales on them by going to Apple Refurbished, and they'll usually be new anyway. Or if you're looking for a MacBook that maybe they don't sell anymore, like I said, the 15-inch M2 version of it, that really isn't in any of the big box stores because it's basically discontinued, here's another good place to use Apple Refurbished. And that's the moral of the story. So anyways, I hope this helps people that are going to be using this or looking into it, when you should kind of start browsing it and stuff like that. I hope it helps people because I bought 4 of them already. And we'll talk to you in the next video. I do tons of videos on my Mac channel, but I do a whole bunch of tech, Amazon stuff, tech in general, SSDs, hard drives, monitors, you name it. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.